The decade of the 2010s saw a resurgence of science fiction in cinema, giving us some of the strongest entries into the genre since the likes of Terminator, Ridley Scott's Blade Runner, and the original Star Wars trilogy. Christopher Nolan's spectacular Interstellar, alongside Blade Runner 2049, showed audiences just how good modern sci-fi could be, only furthered by the successes of The Martian and Gravity, films that proved that a space setting wasn't just reserved for lightsabers and lasers. However, 2019 gave us a film that, bar a few minor faults and mistakes, I believe should have been afforded the same level of respect. That film is James Gray's space epic Ad Astra, the story of one man's journey to find his long-lost father at the edges of the solar system. Helmed by one of Brad Pitt's strongest performances and some incredible cinematography, Ad Astra had everything going for it to stake its claim alongside some of the best of the genre, and yet the film's reception reveals a divisive mess, with discord ranging from branding it a boring slog to calling it a fantastic exploration of character alongside a sci-fi backdrop. So which is it, a modern masterpiece or a forgettable failure? At its core, this film is firmly a part of the journey not the destination school of storytelling, and at times this journey truly can be mesmerising. But these moments are held back by some poorly shoehorned in action early on that feels desperate and out of place. Perhaps there were concerns about wider audiences not engaging with this story throughout its 2-hour runtime, but nevertheless I feel as though these action set pieces stand in stark contrast to the rest of the film's quality, but more on those when we get there. As with any film I recommend, I strongly suggest you check out Ad Astra for yourself before continuing, but without further ado, spoilers ahead for the film's story. The film opens on Brad Pitt's Major Roy McBride, an astronaut of the Spacecom company, as he prepares to perform maintenance on a colossal space antenna. As we see through his eyes, McBride passes by his colleagues who seem to wish him well, but their speech is drowned out by his internal monologue. Stepping out onto the antenna, a sudden power surge sends the robotic elements of the structure wild as they crash against the tower before an explosion decimates the upper levels of the structure. Forced to make a decision, McBride severs the connection to the rest of the antenna before being thrown aside by another explosion, plummeting towards the earth in a spin. McBride remains remarkably calm, able to steady himself and pull his parachute to guide himself down to earth for a rough landing. I don't think we could have been given a better introduction to Roy McBride. As an audience, we immediately feel connected to him as we walk in his shoes and hear his innermost personal thoughts. Yet when the camera leaves his perspective, we are shown his level-headedness and calm exterior through his actions on the antenna, the fundamental traits of his character on full display. Back on Earth, Roy is brought before the Spacecom military leadership as they approach him regarding the power surge. They believe they know its cause, and it's an issue rooted in Roy's troubled past. The surge is believed to have originated from the dark matter engine of the Lemur project, a ship launched 30 years ago in search of intelligent life and helmed by Roy's father, Clifford McBride. Roy's relationship with his father is evidently a difficult one, yet Spacecom pushed the idea that he may be the only one who could break through to Clifford. The consequences of these power surges are then shown to Roy as he sees the huge electrical blackouts across the globe that are claiming thousands of lives, with McBride's actions at the space antenna clearly having saved far more lives than either he or the audience realised. Roy is then informed by his superiors that they intend to send him on an off-the-books mission to Mars in an attempt to contact his father, a mission that only he and his travelling partner Colonel Thomas Pruitt will be aware of. This journey to reach Clifford is the driving force of the plot, as Roy hopes to reach him not only to save Earth, but to perhaps repair the damage caused by his departure decades ago. Before reaching the communications outpost on Mars, McBride and Pruitt must first travel commercially to the Moon, under the guise of uniting with a Spacecom crew upon arrival. The journey to the Moon is one of my favourite parts of the film thematically, as the extortionate prices of commercial space travel alongside a moonscape covered in fast food and shopping advertisements perfectly embody a bastardization of man's journey into the stars. To many, space travel represents the greater purpose of mankind, and to see the Moon, the very embodiment of man's first steps into the stars, converted into a mere extension of Earth's consumerism, is a depressing sight to see. Although the set dressing for the Moon is excellent, the trip to Earth's orbital neighbour also brings with it some poorly implemented action, seemingly introduced to give the trailer something to entice audiences. In order to depart for Mars, McBride and Pruitt must travel to a Spacecom black site on the dark side of the Moon, crossing the surface via a convoy of moon buggies. They are also informed that there could be a risk of moon pirates targeting their vehicles, as if moon piracy was somehow a profitable way of life. Sure enough, a moon pirate ambush takes out the other two buggies in their convoy as well as their driver, leaving Roy to step in and save himself and Pruitt. Given the film's prior focus on character drama and a dystopian examination of near-future space travel, This poorly executed car chase feels lazy and at odds with the rest of the film. You wouldn't introduce Dom Toretto half an hour into Arrival, so why do it here? Thanks to Roy's intervention, the pair are able to escape their pirate pursuers and reach the Spacecom black site. However, Colonel Pruitt's health takes a sudden turn for the worse. Unable to continue, he gives McBride a drive containing Spacecom secrets, alluding to the true purpose of their mission and the nature of Clifford's departure decades ago. As Pruitt is hurried away, McBride boards the Cepheus and finally joins up with his new crew, although the reason for his journey is still kept secret. The crew immediately recognise McBride's name and begin heaping praise on his father, labelling him a hero and an inspiration, although their adoration for his absentee father clearly weighs on Roy's mind. Midway through their journey, the crew pick up a distress signal which Roy pushes the crew to ignore. However, the captain maintains their duty to respond. It is this distress call that brings with it our second instance of poorly implemented action, as Roy and the captain board an abandoned research station only to be attacked by a group of research primates. The captain is brutally murdered by one of the escaped baboons before Roy is able to trap the rest inside the airlock, giving us perhaps the first on-screen instance of a monkey imploding. This again feels like the film trying to push for some more action-heavy screen time, taking a break from the story to instead try to build some tension with deadly space chimps. I think I understand the intention of James Gray and his writers with this scene, with the irony of finding primitive life against the backdrop of Clifford's mission, but I do not think the film needed scenes of Brad Pitt fighting monkeys in zero-G. Following the captain's death, McBride is left to guide the Cepheus down to the surface of Mars after another devastating power surge leaves the base and ship powerless. On Mars, Roy is led underground by Helen Lantos, where he's given a scripted message to read out in the hopes of a response. The script warrants no such reply, so McBride improvises with a heartfelt speech, losing his temper as he remembers his father's decision to abandon him. Roy is quickly ushered out, but it is clear that Clifford has responded, even if Spacecom won't tell Roy. Back in his room, Roy is confronted by Helen, who informs him that her parents were also on board the Lemur project, showing him classified footage of Clifford killing the crew of the ship. She urges Roy to seek out Clifford before Spacecom can destroy the ship and its secrets, hopefully to get some answers from him. McBride manages to race across the planet's surface and board the Cepheus from the outside, although once discovered, the crew greet him with hostility. Following Spacecom orders, the crew attempts to apprehend Roy despite his attempts to reason with them. As the ship takes off, some of the crew are thrown against the wall and killed before the new captain asphyxiates before Roy can supply him with air, leaving Roy alone as he travels towards his father. This solo journey might be my favourite part of the film, as the stunning yet lonely visuals of space are accompanied by more stentor monologuing from Pitt. Roy laments his lonely life, reflecting on his relationship with his father and his estranged wife. We watch as Roy struggles against the effects of his long-haul journey, both physically and mentally, as he makes his final approach towards Clifford's ship. In boarding the Lemur project, McBride is forced to abandon his approach vessel, and the airlock greets him with the grisly sight of Clifford's murdered crew. Inside, Roy plants a nuclear warhead and begins to download the ship data, before his father's voice reaches out to him. Old and dishevelled, Clifford's detachment from humankind is evident in how he speaks to his son, expressing no remorse for his actions and lamenting his failure to find life beyond the solar system. Despite their differences, Roy convinces his father to join him back on the Cepheus, arming the nuclear warhead and collecting the gathered data. However, once outside the airlock, Clifford attempts to launch himself into space using his suit's thrusters, being caught by the tether between himself and Roy. Clifford begs Roy to let go, having totally abandoned the thought of life amongst men, and Roy reluctantly agrees. Clifford is cast away into space, and with his father dead and a nuclear explosion imminent, McBride climbs back aboard his shuttle and returns to the Cepheus, launching just in time to avoid the explosion of the dark matter engine. After months of isolated travel back to Earth, we finally see Roy's pod hurtling through the planet's atmosphere and coming to a rest in an open field. Disorientated by the sudden bright light, McBride is only able to make out some vague shapes moving towards him, but as his vision comes into focus, he is overcome with joy at the sight of his fellow man. This ending is the antithesis of Clifford's way of thinking, who drove himself insane at the edges of the solar system in search of a life that wasn't even there. In returning to Earth, Roy and the audience feel a sense of relief and belonging amongst their fellow man, a feeling so ironically alien to Clifford that he saw no issue in sacrificing his own crew, or even those back on Earth through his power surges, in pursuit of his mission. Despite the issues I outlined with the plot, I nevertheless love some of the beats this story manages to hit, such as the parallels between Roy and his father, or the irony in Clifford's desperate pursuit of intelligent life. Whether it's in his melancholic journey across the stars, or as the cracks start to appear in his stoic surface, Brad Pitt is simply excellent as Roy McBride, and partnered with the excellent sound and set design, this film can be a truly incredible viewing experience. Do I think the story alone is enough to place it up there with the likes of Interstellar and other modern sci-fis? No, but I don't think the successes of this film's story should be overlooked in favour of criticising some of the more lacklustre moments. Like I said before, this film is really about the journey, and if it wasn't for a few awkward moments, this journey really could have bordered on perfection. Undoubtedly, the greatest success of Ad Astra is its exploration of themes and parallels it draws between them, affording enough depth to its own ideas to sufficiently flesh them out. Whether exploring mankind's corruption through the portrayal of a commercialised moon, or McBride's melancholic isolation, Ad Astra cuts no corners in offering up a well thought out analysis of all its chosen themes. Perhaps the most interesting theme present in the story is McBride's journey across the stars and its connection to the journey of a child abandoned by his father. As established early on in the film, Clifford abandoned Roy when he was only 13, leaving the child to fend for himself for the next 30 years. When we meet Roy at the Spacecom antenna, we see how comfortable he is with the idea of his own isolation, drowning out his colleagues with his own internal monologue and closing himself off from their friendly conversation. It is clear Roy only allows others to engage with him at a surface level, closing off his innermost self in service of maintaining his isolation. Roy is insistent he prefers it this way, stating as much during one of his deep space monologues. However, the further into his journey he goes, the more Roy begins to crack, failing psychological assessments on Mars and acting more irrationally as the emotional impact of his mission begins to weigh on him. As everything he knew about both his father and his mission comes into question, the barriers Roy puts up to protect himself begin to crumble around him. This comes to a head as he reunites with his father on the Lemur project, desperate to return him to Earth despite Clifford's clear hatred for his fellow man. Perhaps out of desperation for companionship or a desire to repair their relationship, Roy tries to prevent his father from throwing himself off into space. Despite all his crimes, the way he treated his son, and his clear disdain for humanity, Roy still wishes to return his father home. After his failure to bring Clifford back, Roy is again cast into deep space alone until he is rescued back on Earth, reduced to tears at the sight of his fellow man. Roy's hardened exterior has clearly developed as a response to the abandonment he experienced as a child, as we see him close off his own wife as a means of protecting himself. But as his journey continues, we see these defense mechanisms crumble, with Roy learning to both let others in and to appreciate mankind in a way his father never could. As said by Roy himself come the end of the film, he looks forward to ending his solitude and returning home, a changed man from his experience. There are countless other concepts and ideas present in this film, such as the parallels between Clifford's search for life and the idea of an absentee god, but I seriously encourage you to watch this film for yourself and to try to come to your own conclusions about some of them. If you do get the chance to check this film out and come up with some interesting ideas of your own, feel free to share them in the comments below this video, as I'd love to hear what conclusions others come to from watching. When it comes to a film like Ad Astra, there truly are no wrong answers, with every aspect of this film open to an audience interpretation, perhaps a reason why so many complain that nothing happened during the story. When talking about this film, it's impossible not to heap praise on the visuals. With cinematography by Hoyt van Hoytma, director of cinematography for modern greats such as Her, Dunkirk and Tenet, Ad Astra was destined for some great visuals, and the film definitely delivers on that potential. Whether it's through the stunning space vistas or the bright colours of Roy's relaxation room, Ad Astra succeeds in giving every single location a unique blend of colours and landscape that help them stand out in their own ways. The surface of Mars is covered in a welcoming light orange glaze, before being overpowered by the oppressive red that lines the Spacecom bunker, a hint towards the organisation's sinister intentions. As Roy approaches the Lemur project, the beautiful blue of Neptune's atmosphere adds to the melancholic feel of the scene, whilst the ship's interior shows its age through a yellowish tint on almost every inch of the ship. Hoytma's ability to capture seemingly the perfect shot every single time is unmatched, and it leaves this film as a must-watch visual experience, almost unlike any other movie before it. Every single setting uses the cinematography to its advantage, complementing the themes of the story with a beautiful array of settings and colours. At risk of repeating myself, I'll end this chapter on this note. Ad Astra is undoubtedly one of the most beautiful films I've ever watched, and it pains me that I missed its run on the big screen. No matter how long I sit here and advocate for the idea that this film is an underappreciated stroke of genius, that does not change the fact that Ad Astra had a pretty mixed run at the box office, earning $50 million in the US and Canada, and a further $85 million worldwide, unconvincingly clearing its $80 million production budget. In terms of its reviews, this film could not be more divisive, with a 40% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes standing out against an 83% reception from critics. This division is furthered with a quick glance at Letterboxd, with 5-star reviews praising its intelligent approach to storytelling, joined by 1-star reviews calling it a boring slog, with very little middle ground between the two. On a side note, there's also a lot of French reviews, but fuck knows what they're talking about, so I can't really weigh in there. In terms of awards, Ad Astra saw itself nominated for the Best Cinematography, Best Production Design and Best Visual Effects, taking home the ICS award for Best Sound Design. Personally, I think the film was unlucky not to win Best Cinematography in 2019, but given I haven't seen 2019 Oscar winner Roma, I can't really weigh in on the subject. I loved Ad Astra, but I can understand how some elements turned audiences away. Without an appreciation for slow burn storytelling, this film absolutely could feel mind-numbingly slow, or for those who enjoy the character-focused drama, the awkward action scenes represent an unpleasant break in the established pace that could lead to those who were invested perhaps checking out the film for a little while. Many did heap praise on Gray's writing for his beautiful exploration of the relationship between father and son, but evidently that was not enough to keep the majority of cinema goers invested, especially in the presence of some of the film's more noticeable flaws. So, is Ad Astra really 2019's forgotten masterpiece? I loved Ad Astra, and I will always regret missing its theatrical run, but is my admittedly high praise enough to grant it the status of masterpiece? Sadly, I think the little things in this film hold it back from true greatness. For every heartfelt Brad Pitt monologue, there's a terrible car chase. For every stunning shot of space accompanied by a perfect score, there is a close-up of a monkey exploding. I think had James Gray been given total creative freedom and the reins to create the interstellar drama he envisioned, I believe Ad Astra would be discussed in the same breath as Blade Runner and Interstellar, as one of the best sci-fi films of the last decade. But sadly, Ad Astra will always be held back by the failings of the story, despite the undoubted quality present during the majority of its 2-hour runtime. But no matter this film's mistakes, I will continue to recommend it to whoever will listen to my endless rambling. I had an incredible experience watching this film for the first time, flaws and all, and I seriously believe no two viewers will have the same viewing experience. Some may sit in awe at the beauty of space, whilst others might connect emotionally with Roy through a shared experience of abandonment, and some people might even enjoy that awful car chase. Who am I to judge? I seriously encourage anyone watching this who hasn't had the chance to check this film out to sit down and watch it. There really are very few films like this out there, and I can almost guarantee you'll have a good time with it. While Ad Astra may never properly be appreciated as the masterpiece I believe it is, I have done my part in advocating for this film's place as one of the sci-fi greats, hopefully saving its reputation as a failure in the eyes of those who watch this. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. This is the first video I've ever made of this kind, and I can honestly say I really enjoyed it. I know I didn't exactly choose a trending topic, but I had a lot of fun writing and talking about a film I only saw for the first time recently and have been gushing about ever since. I look forward to any and all feedback and I have a few ideas for what I want to talk about next, but if you happen to see this and know a film or TV show I might like, please feel free to let me know all about it. But without wanting to take up any more of your time, thanks for watching and I hope to see you again here soon.